Ever had one of those bosses, you know, the time who thinks a world's best employee mug is like the ultimate motivator?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've all been there, right? But today's deep dive is about, dodging those leadership cliches and getting to the good stuff.
Right.
We're diving into Coach Dane's blog post, Mastering Leadership, 5 Key Questions Answered.
Yeah.
And we're pulling out the nuggets of
The
wisdom.
really good stuff.
Yeah, to help you, actually motivate your team, give feedback that doesn't make people want to run and hide,
Right.
and even handle those, let's face it, inevitable workplace dramas.
And you're in the right place if you've ever felt lost in those like classic leadership dilemmas, right?
No, absolutely.
Because Coach Dane's insights, they go beyond just like the generic advice.
Yeah.
He offers practical strategies that you can actually use like right away.
Okay, so first up, the million-dollar question. How do you actually get your team fired up?
Right.
And I'm not talking about those cheesy motivational posters with like lions roaring on mountaintops. We're going way deeper than that.
It's so easy to fall into that trap of thinking that everybody's motivated by the same things.
Right, like a bigger office.
Yeah, like the corner office, a huge bonus.
Exactly.
But what makes Coach Dane's approach so refreshing, I think, is that he really emphasizes this need to understand what makes each individual tick.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Tell me more.
It's about connecting with your team on a personal level
Okay.
to really uncover their unique motivators.
I like that.
And Coach Dane actually provides this like framework of proven techniques
Yeah.
that, when applied thoughtfully, can make a world of difference.
Okay.
For example, setting crystal clear goals.
Okay.
Now, this isn't just about ticking boxes off a to-do list.
Right, right.
It's about ensuring that everyone understands the why behind the work.
Okay.
When your team sees the bigger picture, how their individual contributions fit in, they're far more likely to feel invested and driven.
That makes a lot of sense. I can definitely see how, feeling like your work has meaning beyond just meeting a deadline
Right.
could be super motivating.
Absolutely. And recognizing achievements also plays a crucial role in that. Now, this goes beyond a quick, good job in the hallway.
Right.
It's about celebrating those individual contributions in a way that really resonates with each person.
Oh, okay.
So, for someone who thrives on public acknowledgement, a shout out during a team meeting,
Yeah.
that could make their week.
Sure.
But for somebody who's a little bit more introverted,
Yeah.
a thoughtful email acknowledging their specific efforts might be more meaningful.
Okay.
It's all about tailoring your approach.
Okay, so you're saying instead of a generic good job, I should think about what would make that specific person feel valued and recognized.
Yeah.
So if I have someone on my team who's like a total data whiz,
Right.
maybe I could create a little infographic showcasing their impact on our key metrics.
Exactly. That's a perfect example of how to personalize recognition
Okay.
in a way that speaks directly to their strengths and interests.
I like it.
Now, another powerful motivator that Coach Dane highlights is providing growth opportunities. And this could be anything from offering professional development workshops to assigning challenging projects that push them outside of their comfort zones.
Okay.
Again, the key here is aligning those opportunities with their individual aspirations.
Got it.
So if you have a team member who's always dreamed of leading a project,
Yeah.
give them a chance to shine, even if it's on a smaller scale initially.
This is reminding me of a time when I had this team member, Sarah, and she was obsessed with professional development courses. She'd sign up for anything, even if it was only, kind of vaguely related to her actual role.
Okay, and you saw that as a potential problem.
At first I did. I was thinking, Sarah, we really need you focused on these projects right now. But then I realized, for her, this wasn't just about checking boxes. It was about feeding her insatiable curiosity, this desire to just learn new things.
Sounds like you had a bit of an aha moment there.
I totally did.
Yeah.
So I shifted my thinking and I started, really looking for ways to connect her love of learning with our team's goals.
Right.
For example, when we were implementing this new software,
Okay.
I asked her to take the lead on training the rest of us.
Nice.
She was totally in her element and,
Yeah.
We all benefited from her expertise.
That's fantastic. That's a perfect example of how understanding somebody's individual motivations can unlock this potential
Yeah,
that benefits the whole team.
totally.
Now, shifting gears a bit, let's dive into another kind of leadership challenge,
Yeah.
giving feedback.
Ooh, feedback. I don't know about you, but I used to think of those conversations kind of like a trip to the dentist, you know? Necessary, but definitely not fun.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
And Coach Dane doesn't shy away from this like often dreaded aspect of
Yeah.
leadership. He really provides this framework for delivering feedback that is both constructive but also compassionate.
Okay, so tell me, how do we make these conversations less, painful and more productive?
Well, he dives into the infamous you know, sandwich method,
Oh.
Good job, but
Oh, yeah. I've been on the receiving end of a few of those.
right.
It always feels a little, I don't know, inauthentic. Like you're trying to cushion the blow with a compliment cookie or
Yeah,
something.
but here's the thing. The sandwich method can actually work if it's done authentically. The key is to be specific and genuine with both the positive reinforcement and the areas for improvement.
Okay.
So, for example, instead of saying, "You're doing great, BUT," you could try something like, "I really appreciate how you took the initiative on that project and presented those creative solutions.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the timeline. I noticed we missed a couple of deadlines. How can we work together to ensure we're on track moving forward?"
So it's about turning it into a more collaborative conversation.
Precisely. Coach Dane emphasizes that feedback should be a two-way street. It's not just about pointing out what went wrong. It's about working together to find solutions, to create a plan for growth.
That makes sense. It's funny because in my own experience, the most helpful feedback I've ever gotten has always been from a place of genuine care and support, not just judgment.
Absolutely, and that's what makes Coach Dane's approach so effective, right? He understands that people are just more receptive to feedback when it's delivered with empathy
Yeah.
and a genuine desire to help them grow.
So we've talked about, understanding what motivates your team, giving feedback effectively. What about those times when conflict inevitably rears its ugly head?
Ah, yes, conflict, the elephant in the room of, many workplaces. Coach Dane actually reminds us that conflict is just a natural part of any team dynamic.
Okay.
And it's not something to be, feared or avoided.
Easier said than done, am I right? Especially for those of us who would rather, walk on hot coals than have to confront someone. I'm curious, though, what does Coach Dane suggest for when those, inevitable disagreements pop up?
He offers a really insightful perspective on addressing conflict.
Okay.
He emphasizes the importance of, tackling disagreements head on,
Okay.
but not in a, Fight Club kind of way.
Right.
It's more about this mindful approach that really emphasizes active listening and finding that common ground.
Okay, I'm all for avoiding the Fight Club scenario.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, my first instinct isn't always to, jump into the conflict head on. Sometimes, I'll be honest, I just hope it magically resolves itself.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
But as Coach Dane wisely points out, avoiding conflict rarely makes it go away.
Right.
In fact, it often makes it, fester and potentially escalate.
Oh.
So addressing it promptly is key. But it's how we address it that really makes all the difference.
Okay, so say there's some tension brewing between a couple of team members. What's the first step? Do you call a meeting, bring out the talking stick? I need specifics.
I love your enthusiasm. Coach Dane really stresses the importance of creating that safe and neutral space for dialogue.
Okay.
That doesn't necessarily require a formal meeting room and a talking stick.
Okay.
But it does require an environment where everybody feels heard and respected.
Okay, that makes sense. But creating that safe space is probably easier said than done, especially when, emotions are running high. What's the, secret sauce there?
Coach Dane really highlights the power of active listening. And we've talked about that a little bit. And not just waiting for your turn to talk, but really, truly trying to understand the other person's perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
It's like that saying, seek first to understand, then to be understood. It's amazing how often we forget that, though, in the heat of the moment.
It's so true. We rush to find solutions or, defend our own point of view. But sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is just listen with empathy.
And I imagine that's even more crucial when you're the one who's mediating a conflict between team members. You can't exactly play favorites or jump to conclusions, right?
You hit the nail on the head. Neutrality is key. Coach Dane really emphasizes that as a leader, your role in a conflict isn't to play judge and jury, is to act as a facilitator.
Oh, okay.
Your goal is to guide the conversation in a productive direction and help your team find a resolution that works for everyone involved.
That makes a lot of sense. But what happens when, the conflict isn't easily resolved? What if there are, these fundamental disagreements or personality clashes at play?
That's where Coach Dane's advice about finding that common ground comes in. He suggests that even in the midst of conflict, there are usually shared goals or interests that we can kind of like tap into.
So instead of focusing on what's like dividing the team, you look for what unites them.
Precisely. It could be a shared commitment to the project's success,
Right.
a desire to maintain a positive and collaborative work environment, or even just like a mutual respect for each other's skills and experience.
I can see how, like, shifting that focus from blame to those, like, shared objectives, it could really help de-escalate a tense situation and, pave the way for a more productive conversation. It's like reframing the conflict as a puzzle you need to solve together
Yes.
rather than, like, a battle between opposing sides.
Exactly. It's about finding that common ground and working collaboratively to find a solution that moves everyone forward. Now, let's move on to another essential leadership skill that I think often trips people up. Delegation.
Oh, delegation. That's a good one. I'll be honest, I used to be a bit of a control freak when it came to delegation.
Really?
Oh, yeah. My motto was pretty much, if you want something done right, do it yourself.
I think a lot of us have been there.
Yeah.
It's so tempting to think we can do it all ourselves, especially when we're used to being the ones calling the shots. But as Coach Dane points out, that kind of thinking, it can really hinder our effectiveness as leaders.
Okay, I'm listening. Convince me why delegation isn't just a recipe for, like, things going terribly wrong.
Well, Coach Dane really argues that effective delegation is about so much more than just, handing off tasks you don't want to do.
Okay.
It's about empowering your team, leveraging their unique strengths, and creating those opportunities for growth. When done right, it's a win-win for everybody.
I like the sound of that, but I'm still a little hesitant. I keep thinking back to this one time where I delegated this major project to a team member,
Yeah.
and it was a total disaster. Like, deadlines were missed, communication was non-existent. I ended up having to, like, swoop in at the 11th hour to salvage the whole thing. It was not my finest leadership moment, let's just say.
It sounds like a classic case of delegation gone wrong.
Yeah.
And while I can't, say for sure without knowing all the details,
Right.
I'd be willing to bet there were some crucial steps missing in that delegation process.
Okay, you've piqued my interest. Tell me more about these crucial steps. How do we go from, like, delegation disasters to delegation domination? Give it to me straight.
Coach Dane actually breaks down the art of delegation into a few kind of key principles.
Okay.
He emphasizes the importance of really knowing your team.
Okay.
And I'm not just talking about their job titles and skill sets,
Right.
although that's important too.
Yeah.
It's about understanding their working styles, their
Okay.
strengths, their weaknesses,
Yeah.
even their aspirations.
Yeah. So it's about more than just, like, matching the right task to the right person. It's also about understanding what will actually motivate and engage them.
Exactly. And we've already established how crucial, understanding motivation is for effective leadership.
Right.
When you delegate tasks that align with someone's interests and goals,
Yeah.
it becomes less of a chore and more of an opportunity.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about the fear of letting go?
Right.
Because as leaders, it's natural to want to have a hand in every decision, make sure everything's done according to, like, our vision.
Absolutely. And Coach Dane acknowledges that letting go can be one of the most challenging aspects of delegation,
Right.
especially for leaders who are used to being very hands-on.
Mm.
However, he argues that it's precisely this act of letting go that allows our team members to really step into their potential.
So how do we find that balance then between providing guidance and giving our team the autonomy they need to, really thrive?
Coach Dane provides some really practical advice on this front. He talks about the importance of delegating authority with responsibility.
What does that mean exactly? Is it more than just saying, like, hey, you're in charge now?
It's about giving your team members the autonomy to actually make decisions related to the tasks you've delegated to them.
Okay.
It means empowering them to take ownership of their work, trusting their judgment, and, really resisting the urge to micromanage every step of the way.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about accountability?
All
How do
right.
we make sure that, the work actually gets done without, like, constantly looking over everyone's shoulder?
Right. So Coach Dane, he emphasizes the importance of setting those clear expectations and deadlines from the get-go.
Okay.
And this includes outlining the desired outcomes, defining the scope of the project, and establishing those regular check-in points to kind of, monitor progress.
So it's not about just, like, delegating the task and then disappearing. It's about providing that ongoing support and guidance
Right.
without, like, stifling their creativity and autonomy.
Exactly. It's about striking that balance between giving your team the freedom to do their best work
Right.
while also being there to offer support and, course correct if needed.
This reminds me of something you were saying earlier about, giving feedback.
Yes.
It's about creating that ongoing dialogue and fostering that culture of, like, trust and support.
It's all connected. Delegation isn't just a one-and-done transaction. It's an ongoing process that requires clear communication, mutual trust, and shared commitment to success.
This is making me realize that effective delegation isn't just about getting tasks off your plate.
Right.
It's about creating, a more engaged, empowered, and ultimately more successful team.
Yeah.
Okay, so Coach Dane has given us a lot to, like, chew on here. We've talked about motivation, feedback, conflict resolution, delegation. What's the final ingredient in his, like, leadership recipe?
The glue that holds it all together. Communication.
It always comes back to communication, doesn't it? It always comes back to communication, doesn't it? But
Right.
I feel like communicate better is such, like, generic advice. It's like saying, just be awesome. Like, how does Coach Dane actually break this down in a way that feels, actionable?
Well, you're right. Communicate better is about as helpful as a screen door on a submarine. And Coach Dane gets that. He really does go beyond the vague platitudes and offers some very practical strategies for making communication a real strength within your team.
Oh, okay, I'm all ears. Spill the communication secrets.
Well, he starts by emphasizing the importance of creating a culture of open and honest dialogue.
Okay.
And this doesn't just happen overnight,
Right.
It takes conscious effort to create a space where people actually feel safe speaking their minds.
Yeah.
Sharing ideas, even voicing concerns without fear of judgment or repercussions.
Right. It makes sense. It's hard to, like, expect people to bring their A game to a conversation if they're worried about being, shut down or ridiculed. So how do you cultivate that kind of environment? It sounds a bit like unicorns and rainbows. Lovely in theory, but hard to actually achieve in, like, the real world.
It might sound a bit idealistic, but Coach Dane really does provide like a roadmap for making it happen.
Okay.
And one of the things he emphasizes is the importance of, leading by example.
Okay.
If you want your team to be open and honest, you have to be willing to kind of model that vulnerability yourself.
Right.
So share your own experiences, both the successes and the failures, and be open to receiving feedback from your team as well.
So it's about creating a culture where that vulnerability is valued.
Yes.
Not seen as a weakness. I can get behind that.
Exactly. And when you create that kind of environment, people are much more likely to feel comfortable taking risks, sharing ideas, and ultimately, doing their best work.
That makes a lot of sense. But what about those times when you do need to have, like, more formal communication, like team meetings? How do you make those productive and engaging rather than, like, a soul-sucking waste of everyone's time? Because we've all been there.
Oh, absolutely. And Coach Dane, he's surprisingly opinionated about meetings.
Oh, is he?
He is. He believes that they can be incredibly valuable when done right.
Yeah.
But so often, they just become these unproductive time wasters.
Okay, yeah. I've definitely been in my fair share of this meeting could have been an email situations. So what's Coach Dane's secret? Like, how do you run a killer team meeting?
He suggests being really intentional about the purpose of the meeting in the first place.
Okay.
What are you hoping to achieve?
Yeah.
What actually needs to be discussed as a group? And what could honestly be handled, offline?
Right. So be really clear about your objective.
Yeah.
And make sure every meeting has, like, a clear agenda going into it.
Yes. And not just a laundry list of topics.
Right.
But like a thoughtfully crafted agenda that allows for both information sharing and that collaborative discussion.
Okay.
Coach Dane also emphasizes the importance of, you guessed it, active listening in meetings as well.
There it is again.
Right?
I feel like we've been talking about active listening this whole time. It's like a recurring theme in all of this.
It's fundamental to leadership.
Yeah.
Whether you're giving feedback, resolving conflict, delegating tasks, or even just having a conversation with your team,
Wow. Coach Dane has really given us a lot to, like, think about and apply.
He really has.
I mean, we covered so much. Motivation, feedback, conflict resolution, delegation, and of course, communication. It's like the ultimate leadership crash course.
It is.
Is there anything else you'd like to highlight from Coach Dane's advice before we wrap things up?
I think the most important takeaway from all of this is that leadership, it's not about, wielding power or having all the answers.
Right.
It's about building those strong, trusting relationships with your team and creating an environment where they feel valued, supported, and empowered to do their best work.
Couldn't agree more. I feel like too often leadership gets caught up in those titles and hierarchies when it's really about those human connections that you're talking about. Well said.
Thank you.
And there you have it, folks. Another deep dive, complete.
Yes.
We hope you found these insights from Coach Dane as valuable as we did.
Absolutely.
And remember, leadership is a journey, not a destination.
It really is.
And it's one we're all on together.
Absolutely. So keep learning, keep growing, and most importantly, just keep showing up as the best leaders you can be.
Yes. Until next time, happy leading.